We're commanded as Christians to love others. Unfortunately, most people, they don't even know what that is. And I've done 80 weddings, and I talked to, so many couples, and the first thing I ask them, how do you know you're in love? And 9 times out of 10, they get it wrong. Oh, that's right. 1 Corinthians 13 defines love. See, people think that sex is love, and they call it making love. But love, as defined in 1 Corinthians 13 and elsewhere in the Bible, has no physical aspects included in it at all. True love is a spiritual relationship first. The physical aspect comes after the spiritual bonding of a man and a woman in a covenant of marriage, and it's designed to grow in its intimacy, fulfillment, and enjoyment. See, Hollywood movies, where most people get their information, they're really good at portraying strictly physical relationships as love. You think, man, look at how deeply in love, but it's all fake. Real, dude, that is not real. That is not how it works in reality. True love can only be experienced in the context of a godly marriage because it is spiritual and produces ever-growing expressions of physical, emotional, spiritual passion as a couple grows deeper and deeper in their relationship. Every aspect of it grows. That's why a couple can be married for years and be very fulfilled in their sexual relationship. People who are seeking that outside of marriage, they got to keep having more and more different partners all the time to try and find what married couples find through just experiencing what God ordained for marriage. The world seeking to achieve that without God because they can't experience what only God can give, they go off into perversion, and that's what it's talking about here. That I don't want to be married, so they get into perverted things. They look for anything and everything to fill that void, and things get really weird. See, I'm old enough to remember when the bearded lady was something you saw in the circus. You paid like $1 and you saw it at the carnival, some guy dressed like a woman, I guess. Now, these people are running our country. Transgenderism, all positions of leadership, man, of our country. And look at the last administration. The people who were running, even the military, look at that, man. I mean, it's crazy. Such people are in positions of government, all walks of life, especially here in Madison, and in many denominations, they're in pastoral positions. My wife sent me a video of a man in the homosexual marriage. It was the grossest thing ever, and he's condoning, transgenderism, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. This is just a few weeks ago, but it is normal. In a lot of denominations, they accept this. And see, because this chapter and chapter 11 of Leviticus that speaks of dietary laws, because they're in the same book, the argument by these people who promote it in Christian churches, quote unquote, the way they argue this is that both these unnatural sexual laws and kosher diet laws, all of them are no longer applied under the new covenant. That they're one and the same under the old covenant, they say. That's why it's important to go systematically through God's word like you do. Because it's easy to see that this chapter here relating to sexual immorality is speaking of the practices of pagan cultures. It's not speaking, God's saying, you don't do this. The pagan cultures are whom the judgment of God rests, still does. And should the Israelites fall into the same practices, which they did, they too would be judged, which they were. The kosher dietary laws of chapter 11 pertain to ceremonial uncleanness. It was associated with tabernacle worship under Mosaic covenant. So yes, kosher laws, other ceremonial laws are no longer apply under the new covenant. You see that in Acts chapter 10. Kill Peter and eat, 3 words, all you need. But the nations of the world are still under God's judgment for the practices that are listed in this chapter. The sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross cleanses a person from all sin, including all of this. And having been born again, I'm no longer under kosher laws and other laws of uncleanness under the old covenant, but I am called out from the practices of the unsaved world around me, such as all forms of sexual immorality. It's very clear in the New Testament.